All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast for another exciting episode of this year's summer series. And today we're talking to a man who has fully embraced his hereditary lines bend and copied or followed in the footsteps of his grandparents from investing in property. And for the first time at 49, has a sense of peace about where he's going. What else do we cover, Ben?
Oh, it doesn't matter whether you start early or start late. This is a success story. And guess what? Once you've discovered money smarts, the sky's the limit. And it's all on the Moorr platform. So there's lots to unpack in today's great episode.
It is an incredible story, folks, full of lots of great tactics. Let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, Ben, we've got another very special guest on this episode of the Property Couch Summer Series. We are talking to Jason Arena. Welcome to the Property Couch, Jason.
Pleasure to be here. Good to be here finally.
Interesting you say that, because we had a little chat with you before we pushed record, and we asked that question, how long have you been thinking about coming on? And you gave us a little bit of insight into what it's like for some people, because you said you've been listening for 5 or 6 years, but you kind of said, I'll do it next year, but you finally pulled the trigger. So thanks for joining us.
Correct. Yes, yeah, definitely. I think every year I said, next year I'll definitely do it. And so this year I finally got the courage to do it. So here we are.
Well, I want to see that as a bit of a message for the rest of our community, Ben, because I think there'd be a few people who have that sort of should I, shouldn't I, and you and I would love to encourage them to should, not the should I. We say should. So thank you for modelling that, Jason. But your story started with seeing your Italian immigrant grandparents build wealth through property, which clearly left an impression on you. What do you think it was that held you back from fully acting on those lessons from your grandparents until later in life?
Good question. I think probably just not knowing what to do, essentially. We bought our house, so married and bought our house. And in the back of my mind, I always wanted to get an investment property, but didn't know how, didn't know what to do. I think probably... I probably was never really too good with money as well, so I didn't really have the funds to be able to get there. So probably didn't feel I was in the position to get an investment house. Didn't know how to do it. Didn't know what the steps were. So just knew it was probably something I wanted to do, but didn't know how and what to do.
Did you ever talk to your grandparents about what they did, or were you just sort of watching from afar?
No, I watched from afar. And my grandparents didn't speak great English either, so I wouldn't say there was lengthy conversations about too much.
Yeah,
watch from afar for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So if it wasn't your grandparents, there must have been some influences from your parents, whether it was verbal or observational. What were they? What did you see growing up around money?
My parents never invested in property, but it was always, and I guess that's probably the same with a lot of immigrant families. It was always, the conversation was always work hard, save your money, pay off your house. So that conversation around, buying a house, paying off a house, the Great Australian Dream was always something that was talked about.
With some of those European immigrant families of the 60s and alike, there was obviously a big focus on firstly getting some sort of security behind them. In a lot of cases, they came from very poor areas of Europe, and this was their opportunity for a change of life. Yep. One of the things I noticed with all my European mates growing up in the northern suburbs was that, the parents really tried to help their children sort of get their own or occupied property. Was that something that you experienced and noticed around, the people you were growing up with?
Yes and no. They helped where they could. Nothing was really gifted to us. Probably more so recently. I don't want to understate my parents because they do help when they can. But certainly as we were younger, if you wanted something, you worked for it. Pretty simple. I remember
pretty good advice.
First job I was a skateboard, which cost $110, and it's like, great, well, go get a job. So off I went delivering newspapers. So, that they help out where they can, but we didn't get gifted a deposit on a home or anything like that. We had to sort that out ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. So what were the observations then? If there was no conversations, you've got a work hard, save, and pay off your house ethic being instilled in the family. What were the observations for you then, based on that?
Yeah. Again, no disrespect to my parents, but frugal was kind of the thing that kept popping into my head, and me and my sister quite often laugh about simple things like McDonald's. We would never, or very rarely, get McDonald's, and you'd see it, other kids getting it. And the thing we laugh about is on the rare times that we did, you'd never get a drink because there's perfectly good water at home. So what do we need to buy a Coke for? So it was very much. It was always about saving or working hard to pay off your house. Like that, they would always talk about paying off their house as quickly as possible, because I remember Dad always saying, and I think he said it to me 2 or 3 days ago, as soon as you pay off your house, no one can take it off you. So it was always about working as hard as you can to pay off your house, and don't waste money. Like, another one for me, I grew up in the Jordan era playing basketball, and everyone had the latest Jordans on where I played, and I wanted them. Well, I got a pair of basketball boots that were called ponies that were.
I remember the ponies.
Not Jordans.
No.
They did the job. But why go and spend $200 when you can spend $80 on something that's going to do the same thing? So it was very much, again, back to that frugal. They didn't waste money if you didn't need to waste it.
So can you paint a picture for us in terms of the household as you're growing up? How many brothers and sisters?
Yeah, older sister, 2 years old, 2 years older than me. So yeah, mum, dad, and us two.
Okay. So the nucleus family, the 2 kids, and whereabouts in Victoria did you grow up?
Yeah, we I think up until grade 5, I can't remember how old that is. We lived in Thomastown, and then we moved to Eltham. So that was very much a culture shock for me. I grew up in the northern suburbs with a lot of other immigrant kids or kids of immigrant parents. And so, yeah, it was definitely a bit of a slap in the face the first time I changed schools, and I really noticed brands and I think on my first day of school, somebody commented on what I was wearing. So yeah, it was a bit different.
So let me sort of paint a picture, because I was sort of, grew up in Bundoora around I'm probably, 8 or so years older, or no, 5 or 6 years older than you. And
I ended up to 10 then.
When you when you round out the northern suburbs of Melbourne, you've effectively got Thomastown, Epping, and that type of corridor, and very much strong ethnic, sort of culturally strong in that particular area. Sort of that perfect line up from that Carlton into sort of through that sort of corridor there, Reservoir and all of that part. Then you move across to sort of the Bundoora, the Mill Parks, and those sort of areas, which are sort of maybe slightly a little bit more affluent, but not much. And then you go over to the Greensboro and then the Eltham. And the Eltham is that sort of upper middle class area of town. So I think that's the sort of point, and probably a bit more Anglo-Saxon at that time in terms of white European type. So it's quite an interesting mix. So obviously doing that transition. So when you're in the school ground and image and profile and what you're wearing was a thing, how did that make you feel at that time, Jason? Do you remember it as sort of, giving you some drive, or, was it sort of confronting, and did you want to run from that particular moment? Or tell me a bit more about that story.
Yeah, I guess envy plays a big part in it. So, you're young and impressionable, primary school, high school, and so envy definitely played a part. And again, back to what my parents, if you wanted something, you had to work for it. So as soon as I could get a job, I went and got a job outside of delivering the newspaper. So you sort of watch what other people have, whether it's the Jordans or something else, and you sit there kind of as a kid wanting the same. And so, um, you know, whilst my parents were talking about working hard and paying off your house, we weren't really talking about much else around money. So, I just knew that I wanted to get some of this other shiny stuff, and so off I went.
Yeah,
Did your parents actually? Because I'm finding myself doing this more with my younger boys now, 14 and 12, and just sort of saying, hey, it's not so much about how you look. If you're, like basketball, taekwondo, all those sort of swimming that the boys are doing, but there is that envy or that really socially conscious sort of aspect, and I think obviously social envy platforms have a lot to do with it today. But did your parents ever sort of just sit you down and go, it really isn't about whether you've got the flying Jordan, Air Jordan image on a pair of runners, or it's how you potentially perform out there, or how you show up, in terms of doing that, and loving the internal piece of you rather than what the external validation you get? Did they ever try to do that? I mean, it never lands. Don't get me wrong. You got to keep reminding them of it.
Ben, you hoping the kids listen to this segment?
Yeah.
I think they probably tried, maybe not to that level, but they definitely had conversations around, hey, the brand doesn't matter, or you don't need those Adidas tracksuit pants. These ones with the 2-stripe are just as good as the ones with 3 stripes. So there was conversations around that, but as a 15-year-old kid, when
it doesn't
land.
No, it does not land. But we're going to keep trying.
I can relate to the Jordan story, Jason, because I bought a pair of Jordan 4s when they came out. They were black.
Yes.
But leading up to that, I was the Dunlop volleys. My dad had a very similar mentality to you. He was, born in the shadows of austerity and depressions and wars, right? So, and then I wanted Adidas Rome. You remember how Adidas Rome had the blue strip around the outside, but then the ones before were the campus. So I wanted Rome, but I only got campus. And then when I finally got him to agree to let me pay $204, which was a lot of money back in the in the 89, 90 for Jordan, wasn't it? 86, 87, 89.
Yeah.
So he goes, they have to be big. Like, they have to be 2 sizes big so you can grow into them. So, of course, I'm running around like Ronald McDonald. And by the time I actually did grow into them, they wore out. But that was kind of that sort of mentality of, aspiration that I can definitely relate to. Can you did you get a sense of, I'm always fascinated by immigrant families because it's not a psyche that I've had to adopt, being native to this country. But what did you pick up around your parents, around the belonging and fitting in, and some of that security that they need quickly so that they can establish their roots here? What did you pick up around that sort of stuff for them having moved here?
Yeah, my parents both had their own businesses. Mum always, dad probably through my teenage years. And I certainly from my dad picked up. I think he might have even mentioned it. Something along the lines, if it is to be, it's up to me. And he might not have said those exact words, but I remember distinctly him coming home one Christmas with a Christmas bonus check that he got from his work. That seemed like it must have been a pretty insignificant amount, and he wasn't too impressed with all the hard work that he'd put in, and what measly little amount he got, and made the decision that, all right, well, I'm going to go out and do my own thing now. I'm going to work for myself. So off he went and worked pretty hard. So for me, it was always around. They wanted to take charge of their destiny. They both had their own businesses and worked hard to pay the house off as quickly as they could. And I remember they made a point of saying, I can't remember the date of it, but I remember them making a big deal about the fact that they just made the last payment on the house.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's a great story. But it also, I mean, when you have that sort of really strong mentality around how hard it is to earn a certain amount of money and the effort that goes into that, you can understand the logic behind then just sort of saying, well, I don't want to be flipping with it because I know the effort that goes into actually doing that and the effort that goes into paying off debt and all of that effort. And so to then put that money to risk or to potentially put it out there for it to fluctuate and so forth. That the psychology of that's very difficult when you've got that sort of mindset. So, as you're sort of growing up through your teenage years, and then you start thinking about the investment, you've seen your grandparents have done okay in terms of what they're doing. You're starting to think about, well, do I just want to pay off a home because a home's not going to provide me income for retirement? What was the sort of trigger for you that then moved you into this idea of wanting to make your money work for you as opposed to just retiring dead out and then living sensibly, but not, or not extravagantly, just, sort of keeping it simple?
Yeah. Well, I think my money journey, if I can call it successful, has only really been in the past few years, under 10 years. Up until then, I we did a pretty good job at spending what we got. So we would, bought our house, but we living paycheck to paycheck probably sounds to the extreme, but we didn't save. We were paying off our house. Everything was plugging along as it should be. But I remember it was probably New Year's resolution time. I remember sitting down where I'm sitting now, thinking to myself, "There's got to be more to it than this. There's got to be something I'm not doing." So I just started researching and looking up, passive income, and then just you just go down the rabbit warren of Google videos and YouTube videos and Googling stuff. So I just started to look for ways that I could, get ahead. And then passive income, and then property investment came up, and then there it is again. So then I started to sort of explore what I could do and what my options were, and lo and behold, I got one of those telemarketing calls not long after that about buying an investment property. So I thought, beauty,
aren't they great guys?
The planets have aligned.
Hearing like that.
Yeah,
just amazing. They just turn up. They put their advertising out there.
Is ready, the teacher will appear. So let's go into some detail about what happened here, Jason, because it's good for our audience to know what actually happens.
Yeah. So I got the call, and like I said, planets aligned. So I said to my wife, just got this call. Can buy an investment house, tax savings. Like this could be for us. It sounds perfect. It's going to cost us hardly anything.
Yeah.
Somebody.
You've got equity in your home. Do you earn over $80,000? We can get you into an investment property for as little as $28 a week. Does that sound interesting? Can I come out and talk to you about that?
Did you catch that, Stiggy? We'll use that little grab as an ad, Ben.
So we had a guy come to our house. Everything was great. Investment property in Queensland. So I think all the stories that you tell, Bryce, or we hear on the Property Couch were all exactly what happened to me. I went up to Queensland. The brochures were in the back seat, so I couldn't make eye contact with my wife. Like, it was just cliche. When I look back at it now, it was textbook. I got.
They're called runners. They're called runners. They've got a very specific. For those who don't understand, they've got a very specific pact that they need to break, and their job is very clear. You two on the plane said, whatever we do, we're just coming up for a free holiday. We're not buying anything. And they know you've said that on the plane. So their job is to break that pact. And the lengths that they go to do that is human psychology 101.
Yeah. So we bought a house in Queensland. Bought an investment house in Queensland.
Yeah. And, house and land package?
It was on, I call it an enclosed estate. So it was a gated
house.
Estate. One of however many, I can't remember how many now, it was a few years ago. We had that for probably, I think, 5 years, and all I remember is paying body corporate fees. And around the same time, we were going through IVF for our kids, so we were paying a truckload for IVF, paying a truckload for these body corporate fees. We definitely weren't getting ahead. We definitely built up some good credit card debt at the same time. So we sold that, and thankfully sort of got out for it. We would have lost some money, but on paper, I think what we bought it for was pretty close to what we sold it for. So
But to your point, all the interest costs, the body corporate fees associated with that. Did you have a rental guarantee when you first started? Did they have?
No, I don't recall. I don't think we did. We might have.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't recall. But it had, for the time we had it, we had tenants in there the whole time.
Yeah. Okay.
And I looked it up. I reckon it was probably 15 years ago we had the house, and I looked it up maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I think it was about exactly the same price we bought it for 15 years on. So
knocked me over with a feather. That surprises me.
Yeah.
So Jason, you've bought this property, you've sold it, you've had an experience, and then at some point in the future you decide that you want to invest again. But is your wife as keen as you at this point, based on that experience?
Yeah, she's keen. Like, I think I do the most of it, but she's definitely on board. There's definitely times we'll listen to the property couch in the car. There's definitely times she's talking to other people about it. So she's more passive than I am, but yeah, she's on board.
Okay, so tell us what happens next. A few years later, you think, I want to do this again.
Yeah, so I still believed that property was the path, but I knew I'd learnt some things along the way. I didn't want to buy in Queensland again. I didn't want to, I wanted to buy somewhere not in my backyard, and it's probably not too far from my backyard, but somewhere where I could see it, somewhere where I felt I could go and paint, which I do from time to time. There's new tenants and stuff, so I wanted somewhere where I could have some influence, and 100% somewhere where there wasn't a body corporate. So they were kind of my stipulations going into it, and so yeah, off I went, and we bought it.
And so, what sort of, with all of the learnings that you were getting, what sort of logic did you bring into the decision making? So, take us through. It needed to be closer, so that was one bit of logic that you had. You wanted to be in control of it, so you could add value or take care of it, so to keep the cost down. What other fundamentals did you look at? Like, did you look at the long-term performance of that suburb? What was it? Did it need to be close to transport? Did it need to have a livability score attached? Like, what were the sort of logical thinking you were doing in terms of making the decision of what to buy?
So this is for me another good learning one. And whilst it's not as bad as the Queensland one, I definitely hindsight's a wonderful thing. And so I bought this house pre-education, I'll call it. So before learning, I'm far from an expert now, but I wouldn't have bought this house knowing what I know now. And so really, it was just the things that I mentioned. It was probably in a suburb that I knew and felt comfortable with.
What suburb was that?
Mill Park.
Mill Park, yep.
Yeah.
And how long ago was that one, Jason? How long, when did we buy that one?
I think it's almost 11 years ago.
Yeah.
So what's that, 2013-ish?
Yeah, actually it would be. Yeah.
And we know that obviously the last 7 years, the sort of Melbourne property market is sort of averaged just under 3% per annum, right? So it's been underperforming over that period of time, which means it's closer to eventually having its breakout period. But in terms of, but that's what I was talking about before. You got Thomastown, and you come across and it's Mill Park, Bundoora, then you go across and it's Greensboro, and then it's Eltham. Sort of that sort of 25 to 27 kilometres from the central business district as the crow flies. So it's sort of it's middle suburbia, right? And it's what I would call lower middle class in terms of and freestanding brick veneer homes built probably by A.V. Jennings at the time, and that that would have been probably in the early 80s. That those estates and subdivisions were getting built on.
And it had an extension done to it, and it's got an extra room, so it's an okay house.
Solid.
But
yeah, you're sitting on a good land story there. You would have bought the land to asset ratio, probably would have still been around the right area. What has happened is you've been a victim of the broader market of Melbourne that's been challenged through some other regulatory and other sort of compliance stuff that's sort of been going on. Lockdowns didn't help, in terms of being able to go out and buy and look at properties. So yeah, Melbourne's been a challenged market, and that's why it's been in the last decade it's been one of the sort of underperformers compared to, say, Queensland or Adelaide, and or Perth, to that matter.
Yeah.
So, Jason, we've got 2 properties under our belt. We've got one in Mill Park. To your point, there was a couple of things that you would do differently, but that's fine. You're back in the game. What happens next?
Yeah. Then probably a couple of years might have passed before I made the decision that we probably want to get another one. And so probably a similar thing. I think I remember sitting down researching or trying to get information and trying to educate myself a little bit. And not that I thought the one we had at that point in time, I thought the one we had was the Mill Park one was fine and everything was okay. But my wife might have been back working at that point because she hadn't worked for a little while. So we're like, okay, we might be in a position where we can potentially get another one. So I wanted to educate myself a little bit more, and that's when I got onto podcasts, Think and Grow Rich. Just started to sort of just absorb as much as I could, and then and then I can't remember what order things went in, but we would have. Actually, we came in to get a plan done, and at that point in time, realised that we probably weren't in a position to get another house because our finances weren't where they needed to be, and had to do a little bit of a reset. It's coming back to me now. That was when we got onto Money Smarts and sort of had a bit of a reset in our finances. And so, needed to pay off some credit card, needed to get our house in order, so to speak, before we could reset and go again. So
tell us, take us back to that, right? Because obviously, we firmly believe that Money Smarts is outstanding. But how did you find out about it? What was the time between being exposed to it and actually implementing it, and what were the benefits of implementing it for you and your family?
So I started with, like I said, with the podcast. Thought, okay, let's have a look at this plan thing, and so went in, had a meeting, and my wife still talks about it to this day. We went in and had a meeting, and I actually thought we were in. This is pretty funny now, but I actually thought we were in an okay position because I went in there with a few $1,000s in the bank, and then it was highlighted to us. But you've got this credit card debt sitting over here, so actually you're not really in a good place. Paraphrasing a bit, but and Money Smarts came up. So that was kind of the trigger to start organising our money a little bit better. We got the daily float happening, and so I sort of, I think I use the word loosely, started with Money Smarts, but my priority was to pay off the credit card. We had 2 credit card debts.
What sort of number are we talking? How much?
I think at that point it might have been just under 20 grand.
Yep.
So I was pretty hell-bent on paying that off as quickly as we could because I saw that there was a lot of wasted money there. So I transferred part of it onto an interest-free credit card and paid that off as quickly as we could. And at the same time, we introduced the 7-day float. So we gave ourselves a small amount as possible as we could to live on, and just pumped as much money as we could into paying off a credit card. And I can't remember what time frame that was, but we got one paid off. And I remember the feeling of, oh, wow, isn't that, I just felt a little bit lighter. Isn't that a load off? And then let's do the next one. So we paid down that credit card debt over whatever time frame it was. And then, just worked on, okay, let's build up a little bit of equity here, a little bit of savings, and get ourselves in a position where we can buy another investment property, which is where we ended up.
Jason, can I double click before we talk about the final investment property? Because that's also a great story. There's a good outcome there. This habits and behaviours that you're talking about in terms of Money Smarts, and it obviously requires, it's a rules-based money management system that is about setting a 12-month surplus target. And in your case, that surplus was going to retire the credit card debt. But it was also about, the 7-day flute and stopping, all of that discretionary spending, all of that sort of spending that we talk about. As you started setting it up and you were using the Moorr platform to do that, and I've been fortunate enough to have a look at your story behind the scenes, I can see it's quite disciplined. So I've got several questions in this area, but with having that 7-day float and then trying to stick to that budget for regular spending, remember that's what this is all about. That's the regular spending, and making sure that there's no spending that you do, irregular spending or out of cycle spending that you're doing. How did just that 7-day float change the way you looked at money?
Yeah, I think the discipline's the big part, because, again, going back to, I think I said before, if we had it, we'd spend it. And so it was visible there, there's whatever amount, great, there's something I want to buy, go and buy it. Whereas our 7-day float is in a separate, as it should be, but in a separate bank, account. It's the rest of it's out of sight, out of mind. And so we just are quite religious about that. That's what we've got to spend, and we'll say it to the kids, because can we have takeaway, or can we have something this or whatever night it is, and it's like maybe tomorrow night, but not tonight.
No, there's perfectly good food at home.
There's perfectly good water.
There's perfectly good water at home when you're growing up, so there's perfectly good food at home. I chuckled at that before, because I reckon my dad's pulled that on me a few times.
I haven't.
Perfectly good. Insert something at home.
My dad all the time on that story.
We're showing our vintage now. So. So what did it feel like for you then? You've gone in thinking you've got a few $1,000, but you've got a credit card debt, which means that few $1,000 gets swallowed very quickly, and then you find the discipline to go 7-day float. You then knock down these debts. Take us to the moment when you did pay off those credit cards, and how that sort of liberated you.
Yeah, just a relief, I guess. What's the rewarding feeling? Like, you feel good about yourself. Like
euphoric,
we achieved something, and and I sort of vowed never to get to that point again. So that's a big part of where we are now. And
Jason, how did you get there in the first place? Because you've got a very strong pedigree from immigrant grandparents to immigrant parents, and the mantra was a lot of saving, work hard, save, pay off your home. And then by getting into credit card debt, that's, and we've all done it, right? So there's no judgment here, but it's deviating from our heritage. Did you think about what caused you to get into that sort of credit card debt? Because you're not alone. Ben and I have seen some mind-boggling credit card debts in our journey, and yours is high, but it's nowhere near the highest. But
it's probably, I think, as a kid, like, I started working when I was 16. I remember getting my first paycheck and going out and buying, the latest starter cap. And so I just probably to be a victim for a moment was a bit of a byproduct of growing up where I grew up and seeing everyone else
spending
that I wanted.
When
I had the money and I could afford it, I went and bought it. And then, like I mentioned before, I think, a moment in time, we were going through IVF, which isn't cheap. It took us, quite a while. So we've, got a mortgage, got cars we're paying off, got life just gets away from you sometimes. So, but I was a pretty good spender. I still am a pretty good spender. I need to keep myself in check regularly.
We actually saw that in your money smarts. There was Ben's going to talk about the clothing provisions shortly, but there was an interesting trend in that clothing's provision that Ben pointed out when he had a look. Ben?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things in there. I mean, there's some really good disciplines about a rules-based system, right? And that is that you're trying to quarantine a certain amount of money to get through the week. And obviously that, and once that money's gone, you don't try and re-spend or overspend during that time. Now, again, we're all guilty of, events or a party that we go to or something like that. So it's trying to stay within the lanes, but sometimes we step out of them. The second part of that is also the irregular sort of ad hoc spending. And so what I see in your Money Smart setup, Jason, is terrific, right? It's really, really solid, because what you're doing as part of tracking that irregular spending. You've got obviously some holidays, and what you've done for your family around clothing, because it sounds like, looking smart and, potentially having that, is you've got a budget there for each of you, and you've been tracking to that. And in some cases, some of you are under, and some are over. And I think, and same on the holiday spend as well, right? So it's really great that you just, because if you're not aware, and a lot of people just put their head in a bucket and go, just don't want to know, right? Like that's the 50% of Australians would just be cringing to know exactly what they spend their money on. And in a lot of cases, we also say about a quarter, if not a third, of what they say they spend, they actually spend at least a quarter or a third more than what they actually believe in their own minds. So that's the mission that we're on, more broadly in terms of what Money Smarts is designed to do. And that is, it's really simple: to trap more surplus, to save more money, and then to invest that money. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be living on a pension, or you're not going to necessarily have the same quality of life that you enjoyed during your working or exertion years. So I want to bring it back. When you decided that you wanted to teach your kids, now you're passing on. This is this beautiful thing. You're paying it forward. You've got your kids. They've now got a clothing budget. And so talk to me about what that's done for you and the household, and how these disciplines are working for you, to be able to continue to keep trapping the money, because we know that there's another investment that's come off the back of that. And then what has that done for you is sort of the story that we want to close out with. But just talk to us around your tracking of your provisioning jar spending and how that's worked for you.
Yeah, I think it was it episode 200 where, and I've gone blank on his name.
Paul Clitheroe?
Yeah, and he mentioned something, and I don't know if it was exactly the same thing, but it just sparked some thoughts in my mind around what am I teaching my kids around money. So I give them an annual budget, and so I remember sitting them down and saying, here's your annual budget for clothing. You get, and I'll share it at the time, because a few years ago it was $1,000. So I say you're going to get $1,000, and here is where we're going to track it, so they know where Money Smarts is, or they always ask me, how am I tracking, or what have I got left?
More importantly, what have I got left?
Yeah. So I said to them, you've got $1,000. This is your clothing budget for the year. Now you can spend $1,000 today in January, because we started the calendar year. You can spend $1,000, but keep in mind this $1,000 needs to last you a year. And so there's discipline on two fronts. One, it's discipline for them, and discipline for me, because I when I did it, I really wanted. I knew that they would probably blow it early. Potentially, they would blow it early, but I didn't want it to be me telling them how to spend the money. I wanted them to understand they had this amount of money to work with, and if they spent it in 3 months, they would have nothing for the rest of the year. So
Yeah.
there was definitely a few times where I said, "Are you sure?" Or you haven't got much left. Or but at no point the communication was, at no point, if you want to buy something and it's in your budget, hey, go for it. Yeah. But just know that's your $1,000. So certainly this year they've been pretty good with it.
How long did they last in that first year? Did they make it to October? Did they make it to December?
Yeah, I think October they might have got to. I do remember telling my youngest daughter she wanted something in winter. I'm like, summer's coming and you haven't got much money left. So no, I'll be fine. Okay, cool, no worries.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the things I've enjoyed most with Money Smarts is that education piece, and just teaching them. Like my eldest daughter, who's 17 now, she's got a job, which is great. So we reduced her budget a little bit, and we have a little sort of, I call it a family business, a side hustle. And my daughter knows as well, if she wants something extra, she's involved in the business, so she earns a little bit of extra pocket money through that. But she'll quite often come to me and say, "Hey, can I do some work because I want to buy something?" So, I've tried as much as I could to teach them how to save. Again, with my daughter who's working, and the other one who works in our little family business, makes it sound dodgy when I say it like that, but it's not. The other portion to it is making sure that they save money. So I've said to them at least 20% needs to go into a savings account, so they buy shares.
Brilliant.
So when they work for their money, so whether it's my daughter who's got a job or my other daughter that works in our business, a portion of that has to go into an account and I pitch it to them as, you've got to put some money aside that's going to make money for you. So part of it you can spend, happy days, you've earned it, go for it. But part of it needs to be put away to make money for you. So again, probably the same as when I was a kid, it goes in one ear and out the other. I'll quite often say, hey, your share portfolio's made an extra such and such today, or I'll try to talk about it. I get eye rolls from for the most part, but that it was only a couple of days ago I said to my daughter, how much have you got put aside to buy your next lot of shares? And it's just automatic now.
Gotcha.
These are great lessons that you're teaching your girls, mate. So good on for Gabrielle and for Charlotte in terms of what they're going to learn from that. When you do have moments like car maintenance has gone a little bit over this year, and the holidays has gone over, by a couple of grand in terms of your budget, what do you do when you think about that, when you're tracking it? I mean, are you looking to try and save it in other areas that because remember, and this is good for the community to understand that, effectively, when you set up your provisional jar, and remember, it's a 12-month system, this is we're setting up targeted spending estimates for the next 12 months. And we would usually use the past 12 months as a guide, and then we basically try and work out. Now, of course, some things can happen to cars and all of that where we have an overreach. So when you're talking about discretionary spending, such as holidays and those type of things, what are some of the decisions that you make at a household level? Like, did the family business do really well that month, and so ultimately there's a little bit extra income that we didn't anticipate? Like, how are you making those judgment calls around overspending and because if we do overspend but we don't have any extra income coming in, what we're doing is making a conscious choice about the targeted surplus that we're going to try and trap for that year. That's going to be, say, $2,000 less than what we set it up to be. So take us through the decision making that you and your wife talk about when you're having those conversations.
Yeah, the car one, there's been some extra costs. I kind of, whilst not ideal, there are things, life happens. So yep. I just caught those ones on the chin. The holiday one was definitely a conversation we had because it went from originally my daughter and I were going to go on a holiday to Japan. It's quite funny. My wife didn't want to go, which is fine. My daughter and I kept saying, "You sure you're okay with this? You okay?" And I said, "I'm buying the tickets today. Are you sure you're okay?" And she's like, "Well, actually, maybe we should go on a holiday too." So that kind of crept up on us. But the conversation and the decision was, well, if we're now spending more and going on a bigger holiday than we're planning, there's going to be no holiday next year. So whilst it's like
that's how you're compensating
this year.
Yep.
We've already said, and the kids are already talking about what holidays they want to go on in 2025, and it's we're not doing one. Or if we do, it'll be.
Or you'll do short breaks or whatever. I mean, it's a reasonable size holiday budget, so potentially there's no big staycations or drive holidays or something along those can potentially accommodate that. That's
we definitely did have a conversation around, hey, we're spending more than we were going to, so the cost that is, we're going to have to pick it up.
But again, on presents and gifts and so forth, you've got a fair bit of spare change there. In some of the other areas, you've also got the personal care is also quite it's a bit under as well. So again, that's about sort of thinking about how you're looking, and you can adjust that as you go along. So I think, mate, it's a look. Money Smarts 2.0 has just come out for the community. So if you haven't checked it out, it really it takes the best of every other money system, such as the envelopes or the jar system. It takes all the best of those other systems and locks it into what is a purpose-built system where we've got thousands and thousands of people that we teach how to use it. So if you haven't checked it out, please do so, because it really is good. I think I'm ready to pivot back to the next property story, the final property story there, because I think that just brings it home in terms of, by having this discipline, we've been able to trap that surplus. The other properties have also gone well. So now we've got enough surplus money to get some additional borrowings. So Jason, take us into what happens next.
Yeah, I guess I had educated myself a little bit more by that point. So we came in and saw a mortgage broker. So we got pre-approved and everything, and went through a buyer's agent, and so did. Hopefully, I think all the right things, or mostly the right things, and got an investment property in Queensland, which I still haven't seen to this day, other than via video, which blows people's minds sometimes, but that's entertaining for me. And so for me, yeah, that's sort of the shining light one at the moment. So we left it for the most part to the experts to do with us along. Yeah.
Yeah, Jason, you've bought in the north side of Brisbane, and one of the things that's important, and to use your words, it's shot the lights out, so it's done really well. So you got the timing right there. But one of the things for people to think about is it's not a problem to buy a property sight unseen, as long as someone who's got a interest alignment is looking at it for you. So what I mean by that is you've employed a buyer's agent. Our team was able to see that, and then so it wasn't as if no one had seen it. It was either you or a trusted proxy was able to see it. The amount of stories that we hear, particularly when we're buying in certain markets, and we've got great relationships with the agents, and they talk about, this particular group, has bought the house, they paid a fair bit for it, and they haven't even seen it. That's a challenge, right? Because you've either got to see it yourself as the purchaser, or you've got to have your trusted proxy who's actually seen it themselves. So I think there's an important distinguishment that we need to make on that. That it's okay for one of you to not see it, but it's not okay for two of you to not see it.
And just on that point, I mean, this property has done over 12% compounding return since being purchased in August of 2019 for $420,000, and it's now valued around $770,000. So that buyer's agents have done their job in terms of what that looks like. Now, remembering, guys, that we invest for the decades, not necessarily just for the years. So there will be a regression to the mean. So that'll probably start to move back towards its longer term performance. So it'll probably still land in that 7 to 8 range, but certainly it's created an enormous amount of equity, and that's potentially given Jason and his wife another opportunity if they want to potentially go again. Because if I look at the global portfolio for you guys, I'm looking at potentially around, with the family home included, 2.7, around 1.5 in debt, so 49% loan to value ratio. So you really, in terms of available equity there at an 80% LVR is $853,000. So there is choices there. Now the question is, do you need to go again? Can we just retire those two out? What is the ultimate goal here? So have you done a lot of that thinking, Jason, in terms of what does success look like? Because right now we've already had a lot of success. You've made the sacrifices, and to your point, you came to it late in some respects. You had this realization maybe in your late 30s that you needed to do something early, and off you've gone on this journey, and now you find yourself almost 50 years of age, and you're in pretty good shape, right?
Yeah, no need to remind me that I'm almost 50. I just turned 49, so that's sort of slapped me in the face a little bit at the moment.
So am I. Are you 76 or 75?
Yeah. You're not talking about... Oh, 75, sorry. I thought you were saying in my 70s.
Yeah, so we're both 1975, which is interesting. So you gave us some notes that for the first time in your life, and you put at 49, you feel safe. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. I think if I look at a few things, COVID being a really good example. My wife's at that point in time, she was a CRT, so casual relief school teacher, and so she got put off work as soon as we went into all of our lockdowns. And whilst my work was secure, she had no work. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, well, this is obviously going to be a little bit bumpy, but we're okay. Like, we'll even if I can't work, we're going to be okay. And so, yeah, it's happened a few times. I got made redundant a year and a half ago, and whilst that's not ideal, we sat back and went, okay, well, it is what it is. I can't control it, but we knew we sort of had around about a year up our sleeve. Worst case scenario, we'll be okay. So there's been a few sort of moments in time where, if I didn't have money smarts and I didn't have that discipline earlier on, we wouldn't have been okay. If those two things struck 10 years ago, it would have been a very, very different story. So, that discipline starting only a few years ago certainly put us in a good position with those two events. But for the first time, I'm not worrying about the credit card debt or whatever it is. Yeah.
And Jason, with that particular story, did you use the money stretch tool or do the cash flow analysis when things weren't, when you were thinking that the income was going to be disrupted for a period of time? Or
I didn't at those exact points, but I had. So I definitely had, and
you've been playing around with it.
I knew sort of where it was at and knew where we stood. So
yeah. Well, the dashboard's so helpful, right, in terms of the homepage dashboard. I can quickly see at a glance total savings. I can see the annual surplus. I can see the tax payable. I can see, the annualised household income that's coming in. And I love the story for Sharon being a teacher and an investor in property. They're the big stories for me in terms of, making sure that everyday Australians, aspirational Australians, have an opportunity. You don't have to be significant high income earners as part of that story. Your income is definitely above average, but in terms of the overall ability to invest, it's really been done through disciplined spending, which has released that surplus that's allowed you to actually get about doing what you're doing. And to your point, and to what Bryce asked a moment ago, for the first time in your life, there is financial security in your story right here, right now. If anything else changed, there is a lot of money still there that can accommodate you and your family through certain difficult times. But then off the back of that, there's still an ability to, continue to keep rebuilding if you need to, right?
Yeah. And to answer your question, Ben, we actually are in the process of going again. So pre-approved, what day is today? Thursday. I've actually got a video meeting this afternoon with a buyer's agent to get the ball rolling for should be our last one, I think. And that's because of that Queensland house, which leaves me wondering, if I had known what I know now when I bought the Mill Park one, where I'd be. But that is what it is. But,
Mill Park will have its moment. Don't remember, we're investing for the decades, so don't forget that. Remember, everyone tends to forget, but between I think 2000 and 2010, the best performing capital city in Australia was actually Darwin. So every capital city has their moment in the sun. So from that point of view, it's important to understand that that's what will happen. So the fact that you've got and you make the money in the wait, right? Yep. So ultimately, from that point of view, that property and Melbourne will, our governments will get their crap together, and things will start to look in the right direction. Yes, fingers crossed. We've got a truckload of debt to pay off, but outside of that, there's some infrastructure there, and it's a very livable place. So hopefully we can keep bringing the people here, keep the jobs going, because that's what's critical. The economic activity is going to be critical for Melbourne's performance over the course of the next 3 to 5 years for sure.
But Jason, you should be really stoked, mate. I mean, this is a wonderful story. To Ben's point, we get to see the dashboard of what you got here. But if you did nothing else and you just project that out another 10 years, that's, we had an LVR now of 49, and then you did nothing else. That LVR would diminish significantly again. The rent that you'd get on the portfolio would help retire out that debt. You'd be in wonderful shape. You've got good cash reserves. You've got... There's not much that can blindside you from this point forward, and I think it's an incredible story because from where you started, and the early story of frugality, right through to revenge spending, right through back to getting back on track, and then now building up a portfolio that's quite significant. I think when you said before, if only I knew now what I knew then back at Mill Park. I want to remind you that statistically, not many people are about to enter into the rare air that you're about to enter into. As soon as you tip into third property territory, you are in a very, very small company of people in this country who have actually got
top 6 or 7%. Yep.
Three properties. So I would sort of encourage you. We've all got stories, me and Ben included, of the one that got away, or the move that we should have made, or even in my own backstory, there was a decade that I lost from some poor decisions, right? So we've all got those those what ifs going on. But mate, you are rock solid, and you are a real credit to your family, and they should be really proud of some of the education that you've put in and done for your family. So my final question for you is, because you've been super transparent here today. I mean, you've been telling us the ups and the downs, which is, most people only want to tell the highlights reel, not behind the scenes. But we put the call out as we do every year, and you responded. Why did you respond? Why did you come on? Why did you want to share your message, and which part did you want to share the most?
Yeah, just like I said before, I'd sat in the backgrounds and just thought, well, now it's time, and I thought I'll just send in my journey in brief, and maybe it's interesting, maybe it's not. So I been a fan of the Property Couch for a while, and thought maybe it's time for me to jump in, and what I wanted to share was, I guess, the Money Smarts story for the most part of whilst it can be challenging when you have a mindset of wanting to spend money. I can't thank you guys enough for getting us to where we are, or helping us to get to where we are now, and been able to help teach my kids along the way. Hopefully, like I thought there might be some value in that for others, because that's I think been good fun, and they've hopefully learned something. But I've sat in the shadows long enough. I thought now is time. Why not?
Well done, buddy. Nice one.
Well done. Now, I've got a couple of final questions, if I can. So they're not technically a final question. The first one is...
Not A and B, Ben.
Why property over shares? Do you think that's connected to your grandparent story, or talk to us about that?
Why property over shares? I'll use the word dabble. I've got a little bit in shares, not a great deal, but I think, and maybe it's that immigrant story of property. It was probably just something I always saw as a pathway to growth, and I didn't. I think I understand property, or not understand it, but I understood it more than I did shares. So I've dabbled in shares a little bit.
Yeah.
Got a little bit there.
Shares are businesses, right? And you don't know the ins and outs of what's happening in a business. So,
and I like with property the fact that and you guys talk about it a lot. I can just leave it. It's not easy to get in and out, so that sort of works well with me and my habits. I can. It just sits there, where shares you can buy and sell pretty quickly, and things fluctuate from day to day pretty quickly. So
makes sense. Okay, so here we are now. Final question. What would you change in the past? Like, if you had your time over again, what would you do differently?
Find you guys sooner. I'll find the Property Couch sooner, or Money Smarts. But I think, I tried a few times to work towards a budget, but everything I'd done in the past was around, this is what you've got to spend. I never quite joined the dots between saving or the jars or whatever. Like, it was always around, the few times that I did do a budget, it was, let's just say you got $1,000, or where are you going to spend that $1,000? So if I had my time again, it would definitely be around allocating myself. What is my daily float or weekly float? What am I going to spend my money on? But putting money aside, or giving myself a target.
Well, I can tell you that that through those decisions and the behaviours and just the curiosity, you have been able to transform your financial future. And that's not just a little bit. I mean, we are talking about a significantly better outcome. You took a decision to start to educate yourself, start doing some reading. You came across some of the spruikers. You were sold into an opportunity there that, if you had had the greater knowledge, you may not have executed on, but you didn't give up. You also then had another look, and so then you went and spoke to a professional qualified property investment advisor. Now, even though potentially you didn't do a plan or a program with them, they told you some honest truths around, how you were spending, and the fact that you had this credit card debt. And, you needed to prove to yourself that you could control your spending and basically get rid of that credit card debt. And off the back of that, it was going to then allow you to to turn your whole story around, not just into a story of just saving money, but actually making that money work harder for you. So that is the second great decision that you made. Then there was another great decision in terms of, am I an expert in terms of what I'm doing here, or do I outsource it to someone who's going to be able to hopefully buy an asset that meets the brief in terms of what we want? So you paid a professional fee for that, but ultimately that's returned in spades. And so now you've got an investment savvy mortgage broker. You've got a team of people that are working for your best interests. And like anything, everyone has the best interests. There's properties that you are going to buy in terms of in marketplaces that sometimes aren't going to perform, like even the specialists and the professionals want to happen in the short term, but over the long term, the fundamentals still live to be true. And so with all of that, Jason, you've done an enormous job, and Sharon for that matter. I want to make sure that we're not forgetting that it's a partnership. To be able to trust each other to go on this journey is really important. So credit to you, credit to your family, and we wish you all the spoils of now just basically waiting and obviously the next purchase that's going to come along. You're setting yourself up for generational wealth, and your daughters and family and your future in retirement is looking very, very rosy based on the decisions that you made, and the trees that you planted several years ago are going to blossom beautifully for you.
Thank you.
Well done, Jason. So I guess on behalf of everyone here on the Property Couch, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go, Ben. Someone who, it's just a nice feeling for you and I to see someone that's using a system that we've poured our heart and soul into, and it's actually made an enormous difference. We had a look and seeing the length of detail that Jason's gone to using the platform. But obviously, I love the best bit where he says, I feel like I'm in control. I feel like I've got this peace. I feel like I can relax for the first time at 49. It's a wonderful feeling for you and me.
Yep, you set your targets like what we're doing now at the start of the year, everyone. Everyone's getting on there, working out what their expenditure projections are going to be. You got your regular and you've got your ad hoc spending, and what Jason and his family have done have worked that out. So the ones that they want to track, they've got them in the provisioning jar. Oh, it's music to my ear, Bryce, in terms that everyone's got their clothing budget. And so they've got to plan that out over the course. So they've got to think about each purchase. They can't just, have a whim on a whim. So that retail therapy, that's no longer going to be there. So it's really about measured spending, a bit of delayed gratification built into that. Now, bearing in mind, they did say that they had also an exciting holiday. And so this year they're going to have, a bit quieter holiday, sort of rebalance out that surplus. But what has it allowed them to do? It's allowed them to build a portfolio because they've trapped that surplus. So, for me, I just love some of the statements he said. If you want something, you got to work for it. Okay. And I have been frugal in terms of, and my parents led with the hard work that they did, but the progress was simple. Trap, save, invest. That's what he did through Money Smarts. Now it's 2.0. It's on steroids, and good decision making. It's really now made them think about what's important. So prioritizing those decisions as part of that sort of work. And what else did they do, Bryce, which I also put a big tick next to, is they made an assessment in terms of their competencies and how much they know after the first failed attempt in terms of what they attempted to buy. And then, they've learned from that. And the purchases that they've made through professionals has shot the lights out. Now, of course, we're very proud of our team. It wasn't in power purchase. But the point we're making here is that, okay, I've had a go. I thought I learned. I've done a lot of reading and investigation in this, but still, I can't meet the level of the people who do it day in and day out. So I sought some of that advice and got the results that I was looking for. And that is going to benefit both him, his wife, and the girls. It's just a great story.
80% of winning is beginning, Ben. So if you think about some of his backstory, he improved his financial literacy, didn't grow up with a silver spoon, grew up in some of the lower socioeconomic areas, then moved to a higher socioeconomic area, and then felt some of that that challenge, some of that envy that you observe with other brands. And I love the story about the Jordans. I could relate to that. So,
yes.
But here we've got a man who is feeling in control at 49 for the first time with a multi-million-dollar property portfolio. But his Here's the really important message for our community, and it's this. He has a multi-million-dollar property portfolio built on a foundation of stone because he feels in control of his money. They
100%.
allocate provisions. They test themselves. Do you understand that you've only got $1,000 to spend on clothing and it's still September? So it's really having conscious decisions about the stuff that matters. Because here's the little tip for people as they start the new year, Ben. As some New Year's resolutions might be starting to wear off at this point, Ben. Who knows? Third week in January, but it's generally not the big purchases that derail people's money. It's generally not the big purchases. It's the little bits of cancer that kick in over time. The little bit here, the little bit there, a
Yep.
little overrun there. Oh, let's just turn a blind eye here. It's
The
that
impulse spending.
accumulation over time that is the enemy, isn't it, Ben?
That's the slippage. That's that sort of tap and go slippage that we're not tracking, and that's going to basically blow up your surplus or evaporate your surplus. Surplus more to the point. So I think blow it up in the sense of where did it go? Poof. Now that surplus is gone. So that's really important, and it's a good segue into obviously next week we've got our webinar next Tuesday night. It's beginner's guide to running the Moorr platform and running money smart. So if you're new to the whole concept of annual trapping of surplus, remember budgets don't work. This is effectively the most effective way in which you're going to be able to set up to trap that surplus and then eventually one day put that money to work for you. Now, you might already have a reasonable surplus. This might be a way of trapping a further 20 or 30%, which could get you to an investment property, which would be transformational for your overall journey. Now, Bryce, we also know, so register in the description, in the show notes. Now, if you're late to this because you're off on some beautiful holiday for the next 8 or 10 weeks, or you might be doing a lap of the podcast a year or so later, guess what? If we've actually had that webinar, you can now find that webinar in our Moorr platform. So in the Moorr website, just search for it, Beginner's Guide to How You Run Your Money Smarts, and also the Moorr platform. And so that's just a bit of a guide there for those people who might be late to the pod, but we're getting you, on demand later on in life.
Folks, it could be the best decision you make all year in 2025 to actually attend that, because if you can be like Jason and spend 2025 in control of where your money goes, and as a result, trapping a bigger surplus at the end of the year, boy, oh boy, oh boy, that will unlock an enormous amount of leverage for you. Put it in your offset account, pay off your home quicker, buy investment properties. The whole lifestyle by design piece starts at that very point where you decide to actually get in control of your money. And the system that we've designed in Money Smart, supported by the Moorr platform, MOOR, is the simplest way that we have encountered to manage your money. And here's the extraordinary part. It costs you nothing.
Nothing. Zero. Zip. Nada.
Whatever your hourly rate is that you charge out your time is probably the only thing it's going to cost you, Ben, because you've got to read it and you've got to learn about it, which will take you no time at all. And then all of a sudden you're on your way. So well done, Jason, for modeling that.
Yes, well done. Great job.
I think that, and also, his first property wasn't his greatest investment, but he still kept going. So
did a good job.
Jason, well done, mate. Thank you for joining us on the summer series. Folks, make sure you click on the link. All the latest details will be in the link so that you can join at Money Smart's webinar. And again, I'll say it again because I think it's super important. It could be the best decision you make all year. Ben, thanks for hanging out again today, as always, as we start this 2025 with incredible momentum on the back of some amazing stories, mate. But still more to go. So until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it, Bryce. That's only really if you want financial security.
That's only if you want the success that you've been listening to in these success stories, folks. See you next week.